Hello, everyone. This is JD Calderon, and this is Indie Comics Explained. And today, yet again, I brought on another fantastic guest. But before we do that, please hit like, hit subscribe, share out the video, let people know it's here. And also, if you want to support the channel, go check out the Oswald Chronicles, currently on Indiegogo. And without further ado, let's bring on our fantastic guest, Mr. Frank Martin.
Hey, what's up?
How you doing, Frank?
Good, good. How you doing?
Not too bad, man. Not too bad. You know, things are just getting crazier and crazier in the world, and here we are making comics.
I'm spending my Saturday night drinking tea and talking comics.
That what better is there, right? You know, well, maybe there are a few things better, but hey, we got what we got.
Making the best with what we have.
Exactly. So, Frank, let's get right into it, man. So, you know, let's hit you off with the beginners. So, you know, when you were a little kid, obviously, or I should say little Frank, at some point, we all ran into that comic book that was our first book, and, you know, we're all kids or whatever. But there was a specific book, right, that you found that you said, yeah, this is the book that makes me want to do these things. What happened?
Everybody remembers their first time.
Exactly. But not necessarily the first comic, but the first comic that made you want to do comics.
Yes. I remember going to like Barnes & Noble as a kid, and they had the comics. They didn't sell comics, but they had some older comics sometimes. And I would pick one up every once in a while. When I was a kid, you love reading comics every once in a while. But the first one that kind of hooked me was that first drug hit that gave me coming back for more was Ultimate Spider-Man 13.
Okay.
So I got sucked in the whole Ultimate, Marvel's big Ultimate branding, their big plan to revamp for a new generation and make the Marvel heroes hip again and cool. And I got totally sucked into that, and I bought into it. I bought everything that they had: Ultimate X-Men, the Ultimates, Ultimate Spider-Man, even like the small titles that were like they did one or two of, like Ultimate Daredevil and Ultimate Elektra. They were mini. So I love that whole line. Eventually, it fell off the wagon, and they didn't really know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what they're doing with it now. It's kind of up in the air. They got rid of it in the Secret Wars, and they're kind of like still around though, but it's not. I don't know. But yeah, so Ultimate Spider-Man 13 was when I decided I got to come back for the next issue, and I'm like, oh, what's this? And I picked that up, and then it was just dominoes from there. I just.
Gotcha. Now, what was it that did it for you? Was it the art? Obviously, it was something with the story, but what was it with that story that really
it was a combination of things. I mean, the art was great. I feel those first couple Ultimate books, really, the art was really on next level. They had even though they had different artists, it had a particular look and feel to it that kind of new. It felt new and grounded and fresh. Even though Bagley did Amazing Spider-Man before that, the way it looked in the Ultimate Universe, it just felt different. It just felt refreshed.
Right.
And the story itself wasn't anything special. You know, it was one of those, I forget what they're called. What is the episode in like a sitcom where they only shoot one episode in a single room. They don't leave that room for the entire episode.
Right. Yeah. It's like the
term. It's like in Community when they're in that first episode when they're looking for the pencil, or the pen the whole time. And Abed kept saying it's a blank episode. I kept forgetting what it is.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like the Honeymooners.
Yeah. So
just all shot in one room.
Anyway, that issue was Mary Jane and Peter Parker, and he tells her he's Spider-Man, and it was just kind of the whole issue was them kind of talking it over and dealing with it, and it was like superheroes and but it was like grounded and it was real and it tackled stuff. It wasn't big fights. It felt different to me. It felt personal, and it made me want to pick up the next issue, which was then the introduction of Ultimate Doc Ock, and he's just going to town wrecking stuff. So we got right back to that real quick. But but yeah, Ultimate Spider-Man. After that, I read every single issue of Ultimate Spider-Man up until they put the end to it with all Miles Morales and Secret Wars.
Now, was that all
150 issues or something crazy like that? It was a lot.
Yeah, was that all Bendis?
Yeah, Bendis and Bagley hold the record for the longest running artist writer combo on a Spider-Man title.
Right.
They beat Stanley and Steve Ditko. So it was crazy.
Mm-hmm. No, that's impressive. That's impressive. So now, so you're a writer. So now, right? We would all like to think so, right? We're like, yeah, well, yeah. We have those moments. But now, when you sit down and you're constructing a script or a plot for for your artist, you understand? Are you the type of person that sits down, you have the little post-it notes, and you get little strings and stuff, or are you the type that just sits down and just starts pounding at the keys? You're a pantser or a plotter?
I'm definitely a plotter. I can't. Pantsing is tough, especially in comics, because pantsers typically are novelists, and when they do it, they're not constrained by panels and pages. They can kind of just wing it and go for it, and whatever it is, in comics, it's more like solving a puzzle than it is writing. It's like writing by puzzle solving. You got a certain amount of pages. You want big action, but you need to move the story along, and you got to use your limited resources to tell the story. So I think that really kind of pigeonholes you into a plotter, So, and as far as I write kind of differently. It depends on the scene. So sometimes if it's a very dialogue heavy scene, I'll just write the dialogue and then go up and break it into panels later. And then other times it's a very action heavy scene. I'll just break it up into panels. And if there's dialogue that has to be in there, I'll go and do that afterwards. So yeah, I definitely kind of don't script all fluidly. I kind of just figure out what needs to be done and then figure out the puzzle later.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Now, when you're writing for your artists, are you doing? Is there a lot of collaboration between you and your artists? Are you doing like Marvel style, where maybe you're just writing out like beats, maybe like a beat sheet for them, or are you doing a full on script for them?
I usually do a full on script for the most part, even regardless if I'm working with an artist or I'm just writing a script on spec and then finding an artist afterwards.
Right.
But I always consider comics to be a collaborative medium. So artists will always have a heavy say in how the storytelling goes. I'm a terrible visual storyteller, or I'm just a terrible visual artist in general. I can't design stuff or anything like that. So I write the story, I figure out the dialogue, and I try to do the best I can with the visual storytelling, but ultimately I lean heavily on the artist to pick up that slack. And if I'm collaborating with an artist from scratch, we're developing a project, it's a huge back and forth as far as how they want the page to look and how they want certain scenes to look or characters to look. So yeah, I'm never strict or set in stone as far as what I want to be on the page.
Right. Now you've done quite a few Kickstarters. So I mean, you've done how many? 7 of them?
This is my 7th, the one that's currently moving out.
That's awesome, and it looks like I was taking a quick look. I mean, there's a lot of work there. I mean, you have like a bunch of different titles. Are you working with different artists on all of them?
Oh, as far as what? As far as the titles that I ran on Kickstarters for?
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, I like to mix it up. I like to get around. So I like to. It's a good networking thing. You kind of expand your sphere of influence when you work with different people. So that doesn't mean that I won't work with somebody the same time again, especially when it comes to different covers. And I like to jump around cover artists and work with friends, people I've worked with in the past. But I like different experiences. I like trying new and different things and seeing how other people work. So and also I work on a lot of different styles and genres: sci-fi, fantasy, action, and horror. So different artists specialize in different things. So I like to branch out and find new people that really have the right look and atmosphere I'm going for whatever particular book.
Nice. Now, are you all right? Because there are different ways of going about it. So I know for myself, when I work with an artist, I tend to it's rarely ever a collaboration. It's rarely ever a partnership, I should say. I'm usually hiring somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, with yourself, how are you working? Are you working on partnerships, or are you hiring people?
It depends on the project. I have projects going right now that are partnerships for co-creators, and we're developing
Mhm.
something together, and we both share on the property. And then
Right.
we got stuff like Macabre Motel or Macabre Motel, depending on how you pronounce it. And
Mhm.
that was just me. I had an idea. I worked on the script, and I brought the team together, and I kind of paid them all to do their job. And this is kind of my book, my baby, and I'm responsible for all the craziness that's inside the pages. So
Right.
that yeah, it's I do both. Depends on the project.
Mm. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Now, how are you finding your artists? Like, are you going on Facebook, DeviantArt? How are you reaching out and meeting these people?
Again, it really depends. It depends on the project. For the most part, I don't like posting ads because when you have a project and you want a particular um, look for it, it's best to
Mm.
go out and find someone.
Right.
I don't typically go to sites like DeviantArt unless I'm looking for something very specific. But for the most part, Facebook groups are filled with tons of artists, a wealth of resources, and they're always posting new stuff, um, always looking for jobs, or even people that do post up ads. You got a million different people commenting, and kind of lurk and stalk in the comments and see somebody who has the right style that I'm looking for, and I reach out to them and see if they're available and see what the rates are and stuff like that.
Mm.
And then I have other instances where, for example, I have a project coming up that I wanted a very particular cover for. It has to do with, it's a story about a painter, and I wanted the cover to look like an actual painting, you know. So I needed somebody to make it look like brushstrokes and a watercolor, like a still life, like a typical still life.
Mm.
And I found a guy on DeviantArt. Because this is very specialized, and I reached out to him, and he knew nothing about comics. He's never did a comic before. This is this is what he does. He does something completely different. I said I want a comic book cover, and he was totally into it, and he really dug the idea because it was something out of his field. He got to apply his normal trade in
Right.
in a comic book medium. So yeah, I managed to grab him, and I put the covers together. So I mean, art is a great thing. There's tons of different people doing tons of different styles, and they're all over the place. And just basically what your needs are, you got to kind of go out and find people in certain areas that suit those needs.
Gotcha. All right. Cool. Now, the channel's name is Indie Comics Explained. So I like to go into a lot of the process of what we do.
I hope I'm doing a good job explaining.
No, you are. So I just want to, just continue on that. We'll build on that. So when you prep for a project, when you're first doing like your initial prep work to launch a campaign, right? Because we know, I mean, you've done 7 of them. I've done 17 of them. So I mean, we know what it takes. What's your process? Like, what is your beginning process for that?
A lot of alcohol.
It helps.
No, I mean, I start months in advance, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm planning a bunch over the next 2 years, and even before the one I'm running now launched, I'm building the campaign for the next one that I'm running in January. So yeah, it starts months ahead of time. I have a blueprint that I post in Kickstarter as far as where I want some preview pages to be, where I want some creator info to be, a synopsis or whatnot, and it's just a matter of kind of fill in what needs to be there, and I do it a little bit at a time. Months in advance, I'm doing one part, and I'm doing another part, create the project image, and then slowly but surely it all comes together. I mean, I can't imagine deciding I want to launch in a week. Let me start now. Just drive myself crazy. So
Right.
I'm also the type of person that doesn't like to launch a campaign unless the project is at least 90% done.
Mm-hmm.
I really can't. When I'm filling out the rewards and it says fulfillment date, I can't imagine saying, yeah, this will probably be done in July 2021. I can't.
Right.
I think that's kind of crazy, especially as a backer, to see that and be like, I'm not going to get this thing for over a year. And you know what? I'll go for it anyway. I mean, people obviously do it, so it gets done. But for me, I like to, when somebody backs my campaign. I'm figuring that they want to read the book, and my goal is to get them that book as quickly as possible.
Yes. No, I agree wholeheartedly. I'm the same way. Usually, I don't even start until it's done. Like I've already my next campaign. I already have my samples for my printer. So
yeah, I did the same thing too. I don't have it on me, but I have a proof for the book. I've already ordered a proof. I got it. I looked at it. So as soon as the Kickstarter is done, I'm not even going to wait for the funds to clear. I'm just going to tell them to charge the credit card and get those books in as quickly as I can, so backers aren't waiting.
Gotcha. All right. So here's one for you. Like, how do you find it's crowdfunding? All right. I'll preface it like this. I'm old. Okay. So I've been doing this since 91, 92. Right. So when I started, we didn't have Kickstarter. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have any of this great stuff.
I forget who it was. One of the pros says we didn't have Kickstarter. We had high interest credit cards.
Right. Yes. Yes. Well, I was fortunate. I had a parent with a lot of money, who was willing to give it to me. I paid it back though. That was the important part. So we printed, like, if I wanted to print a book, I had to print 3,000 copies. I had no choice, right? So, like, what are the things that you see, like how does crowdfunding affect you and your business model?
I think crowdfunding is great in that it allows you not only to sell your product, but allows you to sell yourself as a creator and everything that you've created before then. And I think this really is highlighted in the Kickstarter just rolled out. I'm sure you know the add-on feature. I have add-ons for Macabre Motel for the first time, and I'm able to. I hated the tiers because what if everybody doesn't want everything in that tier? What if they only want some stuff? And what if they want to be a la carte and pick and choose? The add-ons really allow me to take my back catalog, put them up there that have nothing related to do with the project, and then afterwards they can pick and choose what they want. And I've already seen kind of the success in that on a bunch of the backers that I have already. It allows me to get rid of some of the books that have been sitting in my basement, especially since we can't go to cons. And I think that's one of the game changers in that is that Kickstarters is not just a launch for the product; it's a launch for you and everything that you've brought on as a creator.
Now, considering all the craziness has gone on the last 6 months, how has that affected your business? Like going to cons, like doing Kickstarter and going to cons?
For the most part, Kickstarters remain the same. I ran a Kickstarter in April, which was really when people were asking, is it a good idea to launch a Kickstarter? And a lot of people weren't. This is when unemployment was skyrocketing. And I weighed the decision whether or not to launch, the pros and cons. And ultimately, I did. I pulled the trigger. I had a pretty successful launch. I was happy with it, and my ultimate decision was everybody's pulling back, everybody's losing their jobs. Just stopping a Kickstarter is not going to help that problem. It's only going to add to it. And I think if enough people did it, if enough people decided to stop, it was going to have a serious effect on crowdfunding and Kickstarter in general. They laid off a bunch of people because it was happening. So I wanted to keep the machine going, and it kind of snowballs. You don't run a Kickstarter. It's not just, it doesn't affect Kickstarter as a company. It affects your printer. It affects other artists if they were waiting on commissions and stuff that was coming from that campaign. So on the Kickstarter side, when I went through with that campaign, it didn't really affect much. And now I'm launching this now, so I really didn't miss a beat. Conventions took a hit. I had a couple planned this year that never happened. It's funny, I had one in April, and they canceled it. They pushed it back to Labor Day. And then it was like the week before Labor Day, they said, yeah, this is not really going to happen. So they put the kibosh entirely. But yeah, I had a lot of stock that I was hoping to get rid of. And I was hoping to have a lot more funds to push some more projects forward that was going to happen next year. And so the add-ons have been a little bit of a blessing that I've got to unload at least some of that stuff.
Mm. Oh, that's cool. It's funny. I've been ignoring it. It's like, I guess for the next one, I'm gonna have to look into it a little bit more. Well, I'm just gonna have to look into it
Yeah.
because yeah, I've cleared out a lot of backstock. Uh, I had shelves and shelves of stuff, and I've whittled it down to one shelf.
Oh, something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, these were deep shelves, so yeah. So before you started crowdfunding, right? Obviously, you were looking around, poking, at the system. Who was the crowdfunder you saw that you were like, yeah, that's the correct way to do it, and I'm gonna get into this game? Like, who's the person that inspired you?
I mean, like so many others, I think my crowdfunding guru is Tyler James from Comics Launch.
Mm.
I went to a bunch of his free workshops, and I kind of listened to his stuff, and he sounded like he knew what he was talking about. And I never really wanted to run a Kickstarter. I never really, because when you're running a Kickstarter, you're more than just the writer. I always wanted to be just the writer. I wanted to write. I wanted to make comics, but not so much put them out into the world. I didn't want to publish them, and I've had issues with publishers and trouble getting projects off the ground. So ultimately, when I ran my first Kickstarter, it was kind of like, I got this book, I needed to get it out there, and I decided just to jump into his program and do it. And it's become a little bit of a game changer, and I've had a little bit of a mindset shift in that. Look, if I want to make it as a comic creator, as a writer, I really need to take control of my own path and I need to take put the reins in my hands, and that's what the Kickstarter allows you to do. It allows you to be the one in the driver's seat, you to be the one in control, and not just with putting the book out there, but having a connection to fan base and your backers and your readers, and having a mailing list, and it all connects together rather than just you being alone somewhere putting out a book and letting everybody else dictate your future. So I find it pretty empowering.
Oh yeah. It really is. Now, I'm going to ask you both sides of this question. So, what is the thing? We'll go through a process when we're writing and creating comics, and there's always one thing that we're like, "Damn it, I got to do this." You know what I mean? There's that one thing. What is that one thing for you?
So I letter my own books. Again, same thing. No, it's not the lettering. It's not the lettering. So I just wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write my comics, let somebody else worry about the lettering. But it goes into controlling your own comics, controlling your own destiny. It allows you to put your own finishing touches on the book and dictate how things are going to look in the end. And I've learned to love lettering. And in the beginning, I just wanted to make it possible. I just wanted to make it look good. As long as it didn't suck, I was fine. But I've since my ability in it has grown. And I take a lot of pride in it and a lot of joy, and I enjoy doing it, except when I have to come to a sound effect. I cannot letter sound effects. It goes back to that whole, I'm a terrible visual artist. I'm just not a designer. I just don't have that skill. So, I mean, I kind of do it the best I can. I'm never happy with it. And everybody looks at it, they're like, yeah, it's fine, it's good. I don't know why you're so hard on yourself. But whenever I come to a sound effect, I'm like, I write these books. Why do I even put sound effects in them? You know?
Yeah, I've been there. Fortunately, I think my artists have gotten cues from it, and they draw on the sound effects for me.
Yeah,
so I've gotten lucky.
That helps.
Because I letter my books too, so I know exactly where you're coming from.
Yeah, and you know what? I've made a couple, especially in this book, in the book that's on Kickstarter right now. I have a page. It's actually the project image. If you look in the project image, there's a picture of a guy, and he's floating through space, and there's a couple versions of him, so it looks like he's coming towards you. Right. And you don't see it on the project image, but in the final book, I have he's screaming, and I have the screen wrapped around him. Right. So when I did that, it took me about 45 minutes, and I was tweaking with it forever. And I kind of look back, I'm like, pretty proud of that. It's not my expertise, but I got it to look kind of the way I wanted it to look. So I was kind of happy enough to put it in there and publish it. So yeah, every once in a while I get a winner.
That's all you go for. You know, once in a while we win. Now, on the adverse of that, or the opposite of that, is what's the portion of the process you most enjoy?
Part of the process I most enjoy. I don't really know. Giving it to people, letting them read it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's weird to consider that part of the creative process, but yeah, it's because it's hard when you're creating something, never knowing how it's going to go over. Especially this book. This is a very weird book, so it's full of weird people. It's kind of an acid trip. So when somebody reads it, you're kind of going to be like, I have no idea if they're going to like this thing. So to hear people read it and then come to me and say, you know what, that was totally bizarre. It was unsettling, and I loved every page. It makes it all worthwhile. You feel a little bit validated in the fact that you leapt off this cliff and they liked it.
Right. Fair enough. I got you. Now let's talk about the Macabre Motel. What what was the genesis of the idea for that project?
So whenever I start a project, whether I write novels too, so whether it's comics or prose, there's always that kernel, that one idea, that one phrase before you even have a title that you refer to something by. And I kind of called this interdimensional motel. So the final product is a little bit different than how I envisioned it with that idea, but the basis of it is roughly the same in that there's a motel and there's these travelers that go between dimensions, and these dimensions are all different. But once they need to stay over at this motel, the motel tries to cater to their home dimension of what they're used to. And there's kind of a line in the book where it says people, when they come to a motel, they want a place that kind of feels like home. So that was the idea. It's a motel where all these interdimensional travelers can feel like home, and each of the rooms are going to be different. You could have a room that looks like a cave, or a room that looks like a forest, or a room that looks like a swamp, or a room that looks like whatever. So that was the genesis of it. And then slowly but surely it changed into less about the motel itself and more about the people that are there, those various travelers. And I focused it on kind of a Twilight Zone-esque story, and that you're following along with not a resident of the motel, but a guy that's visiting the motel. And it started to take shape from there.
Gotcha. Now, do you have like general residents of the motel and visitors? So do you have people that just live in the motel?
You know what? It's not. A lot of this story is not explained. A lot of it's kind of left open to interpretation and how you want to, what sort of lens you want to view it as. There's hints, and the vague hint is that there are people that kind of stay at this motel long term, but it's not really explained. And I think that's one of the things a lot of people like about this book, is that they just touches on enough points to move the story along and have it make sense. But there's a lot of blanks where a reader's own imagination can kind of flesh it out and fill in the rest. And I like to do that with a lot of my work, especially with the endings. Stories never really end. They kind of just they conclude, but stuff goes on obviously afterwards.
Right.
So, I like to leave stuff in a way where a reader can kind of surmise as to what's going to happen afterwards. And I get a lot of not angry complaints, but like, I wanted to know what happened next. And I'm like, figure it out yourself. And people kind of dig that, in that they always come back for more. So
you're not a big fan of the denouement?
Oh, what?
The denouement?
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, okay. It's a writer's thing. I know it's a little shishi, but what it is basically is the sometimes at the end of a story, you'll basically give an abridged version of what happened to the characters when they leave.
Okay. I see. You see that in film all the time, when so-and-so went on to graduate college and married a story. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, I wouldn't say I wouldn't do it if the situation is right, if it was for the right story. I never say never for anything. So, but for the most part, I don't think I've ever written a tale that has something to that effect. You know what? I wrote, not this Thursday, but the Thursday before, September 24th, I had a novel that was published that it took me 11 years to write. I started it 15 years ago, and there's an epilogue in which you basically see all the characters throughout the story, but you see them in phases. You see one 5 years later, one 10 years later, one 15 years later. That's the product probably as close as I've come to it.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I wrote a short story once that took me 5 years to finish. And it's just like, you're like slamming your face into the keyboard. What? Where am I going with this? So yes, I could only imagine what you went through with that.
But it felt very good to finally get it out there.
Oh yeah, of course. Now the novel, was that self-published, or were you published by a publisher?
No, that was published through an indie publisher named Three Furies Press.
Mm-hmm.
So they put it out there. It's got a great cover. It's a great blurb. I believe it did well. Had a bunch of pre-orders and stuff. And I haven't, I would say, officially self-published anything as far as prose go. I've written short stories that I have a cover for, and I put together a PDF that I've given to people, or I put on my website or handed out to my mailing list. But I've never actually like put them on Amazon for sale.
Right.
So I wouldn't necessarily call that self-publishing. For the most part, any of my longer works, I've gone through an actual publisher that's done all the legwork of dealing with Amazon and getting payments and stuff like that.
Nice. Now, how many novels have you written up to this point?
How many novels have I written or published?
Okay, right. So yes, we'll go with published. Published.
Off the top of my head, 5, 6.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
Without counting, I don't want to count because then I got to do the whole finger thing.
Right.
1, 2, 3. I am 6. I still don't know. 6. Yeah, let's go 6.
We'll go with 6. Maybe tomorrow it'll be 7. So now the differences between writing comics and writing prose can sometimes be significant. Now, what are the I guess either the obstacles and the benefits you get from writing both?
So I would say the obstacles is for comics is definitely the expense, because you gotta number one, it's difficult finding an artist who wants to partner with you, and you're very fortunate if you do, but if you don't, you really gotta finance stuff yourself, and it could be expensive. Prose, on the other hand, you just open your keyboard, and if you want to just go for it, you just dive right in. And I like writing prose in that it is a direct shot to the reader. You have that connection. It's just you and them. Your the burden's all on your shoulders. It's your responsibility for fleshing out the scene and telling them what you want to tell them. And comics, I do enjoy the collaborative nature, the medium of coming up with a story, and in which case you don't have a direct shot. You're basically using the artist as a conduit to tell your story, which can be both frustrating and empowering in the fact that you lean on them heavily to really flesh out a scene in the character's mind rather than through words and letting the reader do it themselves. So it's really just different mediums, It's hard comparing them as far as your powers as a storyteller. You have different tools in your toolbox. I also love comics in that there's a lot of, like I said, tools to play around with. You could play around with panels and gutters and all sorts of different little visual cues to tell your story and be quirky and creative. Where in writing, to do stuff like that, it's tricky. You can play around with fonts, sort of. You can play around with formats, but for the most part, it's just words on a page. And there's something classical about that, something traditional and timeless. That's the way people have been telling fiction for generations. So,
of course. Now, when you write a script for an artist, are you like we really didn't? I don't think we touched on this because I was asking, are you like a panel 1, scene 1, 3/4 Worm's Eye type of guy, or are you a little bit looser than that?
I'm pretty strict and straightforward as far as panels, and if it's on spec, it's just general stuff. And if I'm writing for a particular artist, it's a lot more like a conversation, where I'm talking directly to them. I throw an inside joke or whatever. I'm a lot less formal, and just kind of tell them how it's less writing and more talking. It's basically it's it's talking through words. If that makes any sense.
It does. No, I got you. Yeah. Sometimes, when you make the right connection with the right artist, it's something special. When you have someone who's just flowing in the same direction you are, it always makes the process a lot easier.
Definitely, it's almost like it's very intuitive. They're gonna know what you want before you even put it down there. So as a scripter, it makes it a whole lot easier. Be like, you know what I want. You know what to do.
Right.
So.
Exactly. And then once in a while they hand you something, you're like, what the hell? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, sometimes you spend a lot of time on a page, you write it all out, and it's detailed, and they're like, yeah, we're going to throw that away, and we're going to do what we want to do, and then they come back and like, yeah, your idea's better.
Yeah. I mean, it happens, but it's just one of those things. Now, you did a pre-launch page for this Kickstarter. Now, do you think that did that have a good impact on your launch? Because it looked like you have had a very good launch.
I think I had roughly the same amount of backers at the end of the first day as I did followers on the pre-launch page. I don't know if it made a difference. So my 2 campaigns ago, I had roughly 20-something followers before I launched, and I ended up with 80-something backers.
Okay.
However, on the campaign I had before, my last one, I didn't have even 10 followers. I had like 7, and I wound up with 123 backers. So I don't know if there's a correlation there. At the end of the day, I think it's just about how you run your campaign. It's a cool thing. It's a good thing. I don't think it's going to make or break you one way or the other.
Right.
So this one, yeah, I ended up with 50 or so followers pre-launch, and I think I ended up with 50 or so backers on day 1.
Gotcha. Okay, that's interesting to know, because I run. Have you ever used Indiegogo, or you just on?
I've never used Indiegogo. No.
Okay, so I run both. And I'm a lunatic. So what I do is, as soon as I'm done with one, I begin one on the other.
Okay, a lot of people do that.
Yeah. So and I think for the last 6 months I've done about 4 or 5 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm like, and I just keep rolling them, and I'm just trying to see at what point I'm gonna like either just drive myself insane, or just to be like, okay, this is enough, and just take a 6-month break. We'll see.
Do you see many people back you on Indiegogo that don't do on Kickstarter? Do you see a return from running it afterwards?
Yeah, the big difference. Yeah, there's a different crowd on Indiegogo. But the only thing with Indiegogo is that you have to find those people. Whereas on Kickstarter, like, there are people looking on Kickstarter. They're looking for books. They're looking for projects. And you'll just end up with these random people on your thing. Whereas on Indiegogo, you have to work for that crowd. So that's the only.
But I feel like I work for people to go to the Kickstarter anyway. So.
But they're going to be people who only like buying from Indiegogo.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one thing I found. The heads who are on Indiegogo, they're only there. They're not on the other platform. And the one thing that I found that's really cool on Indiegogo that I hope Kickstarter picks up is the Indemand store.
Okay.
Where once in a while I'll get an email from Indiegogo, and they'll be like, "Oh, we're sending you $200 or $300." And I'm like, what the hell is that from? And I'm like, oh, that's the store. Someone just ordered something. And then I have to go fill this order, which is a good thing. So that's the only difference between the two. And I found that to be beneficial.
I think Kickstarter is really hard on the whole "we're not a store" idea.
Right.
They put that in their mission statement, or before you launch, they really just write Kickstarter is not a store. I mean, Kickstarter is a lot of things, and you know what? A lot of people think Kickstarter is something, and it's not. So it's still new to a lot of people. There's still a whole perception that it needs a hurdle that it needs to get over, crowdfunding in general. So, but it's definitely been a blessing to the comics community.
Yeah, like I said, no matter what, Kickstarter is awesome. So yes, huge blessing for indie creators especially. So now we've been at this for a little while, right? So we're coming close to an end, but we're not there just yet. I got a few more questions for you.
Sure.
Now, but before we even started those, please let everybody know where they can find you, your work, and your Kickstarter.
So I'm on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. My handle for all three is at Frank the Writer. It's fairly simple. Got lucky that I got it for all three. And also my website is frankthewriter.com too. And the best way to keep up with what I'm doing is to sign up for my mailing list, where I kind of inform people on stuff that I'm working on and launches and projects and stuff like that.
All right, cool. And is there anything you wanted to discuss, touch upon, that maybe I didn't ask you, or you wanted to bring up?
Not really. Just kind of check out my book. It's wild. It's crazy. It's weird. I didn't know if people were going to like it. Turns out, at least some people have liked it. Just check it out. It's got a Twilight Zone, Twin Peaks kind of Outer Limits feel to it. It's super weird, and I had a blast making it, and I want to share it with as many people as possible. So if you're into weird, bizarre fiction, weird, bizarre horror, might be up your alley.
All right, cool. So there you go. Go check out the book, guys. The link is in the show notes. Now, so I got a bunch of goofy questions for you. All right. My first and favorite question is, if you had the choice of any artist that you could get a hold of to do a cover for you, a guest cover, don't worry about budget, living or dead comic artist, who would you pick?
Alex Ross.
Nice. Okay.
It's just that every time you look at an Alex Ross painting or artwork, you're just like, wow, he's got that presence to
him. Yeah. My go-to guy is always Arthur Adams.
Okay.
But Alex Ross runs a tight second, like really tight. So yeah, those are my 1 and 2 guys. So.
I mean, that's really a tough question, because there's so many artists and there's so many that are good, and they got great styles to them. I love Gabriel Dell'Otto. I think he does fantastic work too. He's got a very distinctive style. Love to see he's taken a lot of my characters. So, I mean, I could spend 30 minutes just answering that question.
No, yeah, I know. You just rattle off like 30, 40 names. Now, if you were given the golden ticket and they called you up to the big companies and they said, Frank, any character, any book, what book, and it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be just Marvel, DC, be any of these companies, what property would you want to write?
The answer to that question is Amazing Spider-Man. That's kind of my flagship. Like if I got to write a run on Amazing Spider-Man, I'm just like, I'm done. I don't need to write anymore. But when people really ask me what characters I want to write, I don't think of Spider-Man though. That's my big title. But I think of like Man-Thing, or I think of Sentry, or I think a lot of B characters that don't get as much hype, that are kind of pushed to the side. My ultimate goal would be to write a character for Marvel or DC that's a little B or C, and kind of make it my own and give them their time in the spotlight and let them shine. Especially villains that are like that. They toss aside villains all day long. I'd love to take one that's kind of an underdog and make them a big gun.
Right. Okay. That's cool. Now, all right, I have some comparatives for you. Like I'll softball you and then we'll work our way in. All right. Captain America or Batman?
Batman.
Okay. Some of these will come with
wine. Explain these, or these are just lightning round questions?
Some of them will have why. So we'll dig in. When we get to some of the weirder ones. Godzilla or Gamera?
Godzilla.
Okay. Barker or King?
King.
Okay. Fair enough. Stan Lee or Jack Kirby?
Stan Lee.
Why?
That's the why. I'm a Stan Lee guy because I grew up in the 90s when Stan Lee put his face on everything Marvel. You know, his voice introduced the video games, the comics, everything was Excelsior. So when you thought of Marvel, you thought of Stan Lee. They were kind of inseparable at that time. So he became he became a pop culture rock star. Now, as a guy in the comics community, in the comics industry, I know that Jack Kirby is a titan. You know, he's huge. So, and in many respects, he engulfs Stan Lee. So I do know that. But as far as for me, it's a lot more nostalgia.
Mm-hmm. All right, listen, fair enough. Spock or Data?
Spock.
Okay, cool. Frank Miller or Alan Moore?
Alan Moore.
Okay, why?
That's another one that gets I love a lot of Alan Moore books. I think Alan Moore is a crazy dude.
Yes.
I think he's insane. I don't think he normally says the smartest things all the time, but I think a lot of his work is utterly brilliant. One of my favorite books is From Hell. You know, it was the first time I read like a comic book epic that I'm just like, this is incredible. Because I saw the movie first. I saw the movie years before I read the book, and the movie has nothing to do with the comic. They're completely different. But it was just a beautifully written saga, and he reminded me of a novelist that decided to become a comic book writer. You know, he really just did a phenomenal job at that. And then you could go on and on about other things he wrote. I read all of his Swamp Thing stuff, Promethea. I loved his Whatever Happens to the Man of Tomorrow, Watchmen, V for Vendetta. I mean, you could go on all day long. He's just written so many classics. Not to put down Frank Miller's classics, but for me, Alan Moore is just in a league of his own. He's in a league of extraordinary gentlemen.
There you go. The Rock or Stone Cold?
Stone Cold.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on who you're asking. If you're asking current Frank, I would say The Rock. If you're asking 13-year-old Frank, I would say Stone Cold.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, we've done a few of these, so I'll ask you a couple more and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. Bernie Wrightson or Barry Windsor Smith?
I don't know either of those people.
Wow. Okay. All right. So Bernie Wrightson, if you've never seen it, he illustrated Frankenstein.
Okay.
And just to see the illustrations is like, his stuff is just masterful. I mean, it's all pen and ink. It's just all crosshatch, and the stuff is just incredible. Barry Windsor Smith is another incredible artist. I would just tell you to look up. He did. You might be familiar with Weapon X.
Okay.
He did the origin story of Wolverine, Weapon X, and that's just one of the things he's done. I mean, his stuff is just incredible. But yeah, both of those guys are fantastic. Secret Wars or Crisis on Infinite Earth?
Which Secret Wars? The original one. I'm sure that's what you meant, but I was being snooty. There've been 7 of them, or whatever.
I know.
I'm a Marvel guy, so I'll go with Secret Wars.
All right, cool. All right, so we'll wrap it up with this: Superman or Batman?
Batman.
Always Batman. Okay, fair enough. He beat out Captain America. Why not Superman too? Yep. All right, so Frank, we made it. We made it to the, and let everybody know once again, where can everybody find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. My handle is @FrankTheWriter on all 3, and FrankTheWriter.com is my website. Got a bunch of free comics up there, free short stories if you want to check out what I can do.
All right, cool. So everybody go check out The Macabre Motel on Kickstarter. Awesome looking book. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll be talking to you all soon. Don't mind me. I'm like losing my mind. Take it easy, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you.
Adios.